night too. Oh yeah,
for all is how you get to single payer. But it has a buy-in transition period, which is really important. 2005, when I ran for Congress in a 2-to-1 Republican district, I actually ran on Medicare for all, and I won that 2-to-1 Republican district twice. And the way I formulated it was simple. Anyone who doesn't have access to insurance they like, they could buy in at a percentage of income they could afford. So that's what we put into the transition period for our Medicare for All plan. I believe we need to get to universal health care as a right and not a privilege to single payer. The quickest way you get there is you create competition with the insurers. God bless the insurers if they want to compete, they can certainly try. But they've never put people over their profits, and I doubt they ever will.
Let's see, are other fucking channels are doing it through NBC, or am I crazy now? Or are people watching it through YouTube? Yeah, they're watching it through YouTube so they don't get a fucking strike. Hopefully YouTube doesn't do what they did last time. Gotta switch to I don't know, it's been killing me, man. What you doing? Playing Destiny? Mondo? Can you hear me?
Natural glide path to the single-payer environment. But let's remember, even in countries that have outright socialized medicine, like England, even there's still a private sector. That's fine. It's just that for our primary care, we can't be relying on the tender mercies of the corporate system. This one's very personal for me. I started out this year dealing with the terminal illness of my father. I make decisions for a living, and nothing could have prepared me for the kind of decisions our family faced. But the thing we had going for us was that we never had to make those decisions based on whether it was going to bankrupt our family because of Medicare. And I want every family to have that same freedom to do what is medically right, not live in...
Yep, YouTube's still doing the same bullshit.
What?
Like, it'll just drop out of nowhere. Shit makes no sense, man. Well, Twitter might say otherwise. Twitter might be straight. Oh, it just takes you straight to NBC. Wow, what the fuck, YouTube? YouTube's going straight draconian, dude. Can't even get this shit up for some reason. I don't care about Jimmy Kimmel. What? I'm just trying to watch the debates, man. I don't want NBC TV.
The government-run plan. None of the states that have tried something like that, California, Vermont, New York, has struggled with it, successful. If politicians can't make it work in those states, how would you implement it on a national level? How does this work?
Listen, I find it hard to believe that every other major country on earth, including my neighbor 50 miles north of me, Canada, somehow has figured out a way to provide health care to every man, woman, and child, and in most cases, they're spending 50% per capita what we are spending. Let's be clear. Let us be very clear. The function of health care today, from the insurance and drug company perspective, is not to provide quality care to all in a cost-effective way. The function of the healthcare system today is to make billions in profits for the insurance companies. And last year, if you could believe it, while we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and I will lower prescription drug prices in half in this country, top 10 companies made $69 billion.
He's like, oh shit.
they will spend hundreds of millions of dollars lying to the American people, telling us why we cannot have a Medicare for all single-payer program.
I just have to follow up there. How do you implement it on a national level? How do you implement it on a national level, given the fact it's not succeeded and other states have tried?
I will tell you how we'll do it. We'll do it the way real change has always taken place, whether it was the labor movement, the civil rights movement, or the women's movement. We will have Medicare for all, when tens of millions of people are prepared to stand up and tell the insurance companies and the drug companies that their day is gone, that health care is a human right, not something to make huge profits off of.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Williamson, this is a question for you. We've been excuse me, I'm addressing the question, Ms. Williamson. We've been talking a lot about access to health insurance, but for many Americans, their most pressing concern is the high cost of health care. How would you lower the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, first of all, the government should never have made the deal with the big pharma that they couldn't negotiate. That was just part of the regular corruption by which multinational corporations have their way with us. You know, I want to say that while I agree with, I'm with Senator Bennett and others, but I agree with almost everything here. I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice that we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again. We've got to get deeper than just these superficial fixes, as important as they are. What? Even if we're just talking about the superficial fixes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we have prevention. So many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies.
You know, she's there. She's the goof candidate. All these candidates.
A question for you. You want to keep the system that we have in place with Obamacare and build on it. You mentioned that a moment ago. Is that enough to get us to universal coverage?
I believe that will get us the quickest way there. And I thought the Vice President was very moving about this, and Mayor Pete as well. I had prostate cancer recently, as you may know, and it's why I was a little late getting in the race. The same week, my kid had her appendectomy out. And I feel very strongly that families ought to be able to have this choice. I think that's what the American people want. I believe it will get us there quickly. There are millions of people in America that do not have health insurance today because they can't. They're too wealthy. They make too much money to be on Medicaid. They can't afford health insurance.
Companies are like, oh, we can't cover that.
Says that Canada is single payer. There are 35 million people in Canada. There are 330 million people in the United States, easily the number of people on a public option. It could easily be 35 million.
Is that a Republican talking point?
And for them, it would be Medicare for all, as Mayor Buttigieg says. But for others that want to keep it, they should be able to keep it. And I think that will be the fastest way to get where we need to go. Also, I will say, Bernie is a very honest person. He has said over and over again, unlike others that have supported this legislation, over and over again, that this will ban, make illegal, all insurance except cosmetic, except insurance for, I guess that's for plastic surgery. Everything else is banned under the Medicare for all proposal that he has
I'd let you go a little longer there, but obviously, Senator Sanders, you got a response. Senator Sanders, you
just very briefly.
Fuck you, Mike.
Medicare is the most popular health insurance program in the country. People don't like their private insurance companies. They like their doctors and hospitals. Under our plan, people go to any doctor they want, any hospital they want. We will substantially lower the cost of health care in this country because we'll stop the greed of the insurance companies and the drug companies.
On this issue, we have to think about how this affects real people. And the reality of how this affects real people is captured in a story that many of us heard, and I will paraphrase. There is, any night in America, a parent who's seeing that their child has a temperature that is out of control, calls 911, what should I do? And they say, take the child to the emergency room. And so they get in their car, and they drive, and they're sitting in the parking lot outside of the emergency room, looking at those sliding glass doors while they have the hand on the forehead of their child, knowing
that if they walk through those sliding glass doors, even though they have insurance, they will be out of $5,000 deductible, $5,000
That's
deductible
based on
when they
that's
walk through those
subjective, though,
doors.
because
That's what
you
insurance
can't say
companies
that.
are doing.
Every person has a different deductible.
We're going to continue this
I mean,
discussion.
she may have brought that number out of an average.
Candidates, please.
I'm one of those parents. I was just in the emergency room, and I'm telling
Congressman, thank you.
we fight health insurance companies every single week. We stand in line and pay expensive prescription drugs. We have to have a health care guarantee. If you're sick, you're seen, and in America, you never go broke because of it.
Everybody trying to go up the money.
Bernie Sanders. We're talking tonight about these government health care plans that you've proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Let me start with you, Mayor Buttigieg. Why? Mayor Buttigieg, why?
Because our country is healthier when everybody is healthier. And remember, we're talking about something people are given a chance to buy into. In the same way that there are undocumented immigrants in my community who they pay sales taxes, they pay property taxes directly or indirectly. This is not about a handout. This is an insurance program.
Okay.
And we do ourselves no favors by having 11 million undocumented people in our country be unable to access health care. But of course, the real problem is we shouldn't have 11 million undocumented people with no pathway to citizenship. It makes no sense. And the American people agree on what to do. This is the crazy thing. If leadership consists of forming a consensus around a divisive issue, this White House has divided us around a consensus issue. The American people want a pathway to citizenship. They want protections for dreamers. We need to clean up the lawful immigration system, like how my father immigrated to this country. And as part of a compromise, we can do whatever common sense measures are needed at the border. But Washington can't deliver on something the American people want. What does that tell you about the system we're living in? It tells you it needs profound structural reform.
Vice President Biden, I believe you said that your health care plan would not cover undocumented immigrants. Could you explain your position?
I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
I believe at the show of hands you did not raise your hand. Did you raise your hand?
Wait, what?
Okay, sorry.
Old ass.
So you said it would be covered under your plan, which is different than Obamacare.
Yes, but here's the thing.
Can you explain that change?
Yes. You cannot let, as the mayor said, you cannot let people who are sick, no matter where they come from, no matter what their status, go uncovered. You can't do that. It's just going to be taken care of, period. You have to. It's a humane thing to do. But here's the deal. The deal is that he's right about three things. Number one, they, in fact, contribute to the well-being of the country, but they also, for example, they've increased the lifespan of Social Security because they have a job, they're paying a Social Security tax. That's what they're doing. It's increased the lifespan. They would do the same thing in terms of reducing the overall cost of health care by them being able to be treated and not wait till they're in extremis. The other thing is, folks, look, we can deal with these insurance companies. We can deal with the insurance companies by, number one, putting insurance executives in jail for their misleading advertising, what they're doing on opioids, what they're doing paying doctors to prescribe. We could be doing this by making sure everyone who is on Medicare, that the government should be able to negotiate the price for whatever
top executives, don't worry, nothing's going to change. That was Joe Biden who did that.
That we, in fact,
Bernie or someone else would call his ass out for that shit.
I just want to address that point.
Actually, if you can hold off a minute, we need to take a short break here. We got a lot more we need to talk to all of you about, so stick with us. We're just getting started. We'll be back with more from Miami right after this.
Oh, I think I know the move here. You know what probably the move is, Armando? Biden is looking at Buttigieg as a potential cabinet or a potential side ticket. BB, Biden Buttigieg, 2020.
Oh, gosh.
People who talk a lot but don't mean shit that they say. It's the perfect strategy.
At that point, it's like, fuck it, Yang, man.
No, Yang? Fuck no.
At that point.
What? You gonna vote for Andrew Yang?
I'll vote for Andrew Yang over Biden, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, me too. But still, I'll vote for most of them over Biden, except Kirsten Gillibrand and the rest. But it's Bernie or die. Literally for the country. It's Bernie or die. You guys want to make, You want to do Trump for the fuck of it? Can't do that. Let me do something. Oh, they're about to be back in 40 seconds. Let me do this. It's like a big white spot. Check YouTube real quick. Because there's just more interactions on YouTube. Twitch, only 2 viewers. Me and me. Let's see. Oh yeah, other channels got the copyright strike. I told you that already, right? Mondo. Oh, you're not talking to me? Okay.
Border. Many of them are being detained, including small children, in private detention centers in Florida and throughout our country. Most of the candidates on this stage say the conditions at these facilities are abhorrent. On January 20th, 2021, if you are president, what specifically would you do with the thousands of people who try to reach the United States every day and want a better life through asylum?
Immediately on January 20th of 2021, I will, first of all, we cannot forget our DACA recipients, and so I'm going to start there. I will immediately, by executive action, reinstate DACA status and DACA protection to those young people. I will further extend protection for deferral of deportation for their parents and for veterans who we have so many who are undocumented and have served our country and fought for our democracy. I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers.
And this is coming from the woman who locked up parents if their children didn't show up to school. American parents at that. You think she's going to look out for immigrants? Does that make sense to you, Armando?
Locking children up,
nope.
Separating them from
the same woman who locked up parents
that we have to think about this
because their children didn't show up to school.
Real people.
Saying that she's going to take care of DACA recipients.
Who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
Governor Hickenlooper. Governor Hickenlooper.
Uh-oh.
Day one.
The Grim Reaper himself.
So
day one at the White House.
Hickenlooper?
How do
the devil
you
himself. Just look at him. Evil.
Let me get to you in just a second.
I'm sorry.
Governor, day one, thousands of men, women, and children cross the border asking for asylum for a better life. What do you do? Day one, hour one.
Well, certainly the images we've seen this week just compound the emotional impact that the world is judging us by. If you'd ever told me any time in my life that this country would sanction federal agents to take children from the arms of their parents, put them in cages, actually put them up for adoption. In Colorado, we call that kidnapping. I would have told you.
In the United States, we call that kidnapping.
I would have told you it was unbelievable. And the first thing we have to do is recognize the humanitarian crisis on the border for what it is. We make sure that there are the sufficient facilities in place so that women and children are not separated from their families. The children are with their families. We have to make sure that ICE is completely reformed, and they begin looking at their job in a humanitarian way where they're addressing the whole needs of the people that they are engaged with along the border. And we'd have to make sure ultimately that we provide not just shelter, but food, clothing, and access to medical care.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes, what Donald Trump has done to these children, and it's not just in Colorado, Governor, you're right, it is kidnapping, and it's extremely important for us to realize that. If you forcibly take a child from their parents' arms, you are kidnapping them. And if you take a lot of children and you put them in a detainment center, thus inflicting chronic trauma upon them, that's called child abuse. This is collective child abuse.
Oh my God.
This is crime. Both of those things are a crime. And if your government does it, that doesn't make it less of a crime.
This is the actual non-politician that's there.
And what President Trump has done is not only attack these children, not only demonize these immigrants, he is attacking a basic principle of America's moral core. We open our hearts to the stranger. This is extremely important. And it's also important for all of us to remember, and I have great respect for everyone who is on this stage, but we're going to talk about what to do about health care. Well, where have you been, guys? Because if it's not just a matter of a plan, and I haven't heard anybody on this stage who has talked about American foreign policy in Latin America and how we might have, in the last few decades, contributed to something big more.
Senator Gillibrand, what would you do as president with a reality?
Well, one of the worst things about President Trump that he's done to this country is he's torn apart the moral fabric of who we are. When he started separating children at the border from their parents, the fact that 7 children have died in his custody, the fact that dozens of children have been separated from their parents and they have no plan to reunite them. So I would do a few things. First, I would fight for comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway to citizenship. Second, I would reform how we treat asylum seekers at the border. I would have a community-based treatment center where you're doing it within the communities, where asylum seekers are given lawyers, where there's real immigration judges, not employees of the Attorney General, but appointed for life, and have a community-based system. I would fund border security, but the worst thing President Trump has done is he's diverted the funds away from cross-border terrorism, cross-border human trafficking, drug trafficking, and gun trafficking, and he's given that money to the for-profit prisons. I would not be spending money in for-profit prisons to lock up children and asylum seekers.
We had a very spirited debate on this stage last night on the topic of decriminalization of the border. If you'd be so kind, raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we can see them?
And let's remember, that's not just a theoretical exercise. That criminalization, that is the basis for family separation. You do away with that, it's no longer possible. Of course, it wouldn't be possible anyway in my presidency because it is dead wrong. We got to talk about one other thing, because the Republican Party likes to cloak itself in the language of religion. Now, our party doesn't talk about that as much, largely for a very good reason, which was we are committed to the separation of church and state, and we stand for people of any religion and people of no religion. But we should call out hypocrisy when we see it. And for a party that associates itself with Christianity, to say that it is okay to suggest that God would smile on the division of families at the hands of federal agents, that God would condone putting children in cages, has lost all claim to ever use religious language again.
Vice President, Mr. Vice President, I don't know if you raised your hand or were just asking to speak. Look, would you decriminalize crossing the border without documents?
The first thing I would do is unite families. I surge immediately. Billions of dollars worth of help to the region immediately. Look, I talk about foreign policy. I'm the guy that got a bipartisan agreement at the very end of the campaign, at the very end of our term, to spend $740 million to deal with the problem. And that was to go to the root cause of why people are leaving in the first place. It was working. We saw, as you know, a net decrease in the number of children who were coming. The crisis was abated. And along came this president. He said he immediately discontinued that. We all talk about these things. I did it. I did it. $740 million. Now look.
Oh, they enabled my live streams, Armando.
We have to do. The law now requires the reuniting of those families. We would reunite those families, period. And if not, we put those children in a circumstance where they were safe until we could find their parents. And lastly, the idea that he's in court with his Justice Department saying children in cages do not need a bed, do not need a blanket, do not need a toothbrush. That is outrageous.
Vice President, the Obama-Biden administration was... The Obama-Biden administration deported more than 3 million Americans. My question to you is, if an individual is living in the United States of America without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
No. Depending if they committed a major crime.
No.
They should be deported. And the president was left in his... President Obama, I think, did a heck of a job. To compare him to what this guy's doing is absolutely, I find, immoral.
Obama was just as bad with immigrants in the
we should not be locking people up. We should be making sure we change the circumstance, as we did, why they would leave in the first place. And those who come seeking asylum, we should immediately have the capacity to absorb them, keep them safe until they can be heard.
A 15-second, if you could, if you wish to answer. Should someone who is here without documents, and that is his only offense, should that person be deported?
That person should not be the focus of deportation. We should fundamentally change the way we deal with them.
You guys believe him?
Senator,
I want to suggest that I agree with a lot of what Kamala just said. And that is, on day one, we take out our executive order pen and we rescind every damn thing on this issue that Trump has done. Number two, picking up on the point that Joe made, we got to look at the root causes. The situation where Honduras, among other things, is a failing state.
They removed the copyright strike on my YouTube channel.
You got gangs
did they?
telling
I can live stream on
families
YouTube
that if
now.
a 10-year-old
A little bit too late now. Wish I knew that earlier.
Going to be killed.
Huh?
What we have got to do on day
So they tell you
one
why
is
they get
invite
back
the
to you?
presidents and the leadership of Central America and
Hmm.
Mexico together. This is a
he'll
hemispheric
complain.
problem that we have got to
Congressman
address.
Swalwell, what do you do?
Day one?
No. If someone is here without documents, and that is their only offense, is that person to be deported?
No, that person can be a part
Bruh,
of this great American
I've been
experience.
commenting on like
that
all
person
like
can
big
contribute. My
YouTubers
congressional
channels
district is one of the most diverse
about like
in America,
what's been going
and
on
we see the
with me and
benefits
stuff, and then
when
people
people
are like,
contribute and they
people are
become a part of the
commenting back,
community
like,
and they're not
oh
in the
man,
shadow
sorry, or
economy. Day one for me,
YouTube, good
families
job,
are
you're sending
reunited.
everyone to Twitch.
This president
It's stupid.
for immigrants, there's nothing he will not do to separate a family, cage a child, or erase their existence by weaponizing the census. And there is nothing that we cannot do in the courts and that I will not do as president to reverse that and to make sure that families always belong together.
Senator Harris.
Are you watching it or no? You're playing Dota, right?
Well, thank you.
No, I'm playing
I
Dota.
will say, no, absolutely not. They should not be deported.
Well, this
This was one of the very few issues
Yeah,
with
it's
which
the first
I
debate.
disagreed with
It's Bernie Sanders.
the administration, with whom I otherwise had a great
Yeah,
relationship.
exactly.
And a great deal of
I already know who I'm
respect.
voting
But
for.
on
I
the
don't need to
secure
hear other
communities
people's
issue,
stuff.
I was Attorney General of California. I led the second largest Department of Justice in the United States,
It was
second
Bernie,
only to the
Elizabeth
United States
Warren.
Department of Justice, in a state of 40 million
And that's it.
people.
Besides that, I
And
don't give a
on
fuck.
this issue, I disagreed with my
You just said you would vote for
because
Yang.
the policy was
You're part of the Yang gang, right? You want that $1,000
people
so you can buy more
who,
games.
by ICE's own definition, were non-criminals.
Shit, if I got $1,000 a month, I'll put that shit in
And the
stock.
chief law
Fuck it.
officer of the state of California, I issued a directive to the sheriffs of my state
But that
they
means you
did
won't
not
receive
have to
Social
comply
Security. That means you
with
won't receive
detainers.
food
And instead
stamps
should
if
make
you need
decisions
it.
based
All
on
that
the
stuff
best
be
interest
taken
of
away from
public
you.
safety of their community. Because what I saw, and I was tracking it
Who
every
needs food
day.
stamps?
I was tracking it and saw
So who needs
that
food stamps?
that parents,
Poor
people who had not committed
When
a
you got
crime, even by
$1,000
ICE's own
a month,
definition,
Eric.
were being deported.
That's
but I have to
nothing,
add
be
a
honest
point
with you,
here.
man.
The problem with this
If
kind
you're
of
working, it is.
policy,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I
You're
know it
working.
as a prosecutor, I want a rape victim to
Like
be
right now,
able
if I
to
had an
run
extra
in the middle
$1,000 a month,
of
I'd be like,
to
okay,
run
that's
in the middle of the
cool.
street
Yeah, you
and
buy
wave
more
down
levels
a
on the
police
battle
officer
pass,
and
wouldn't you?
report the crime against
Nah,
her.
I'll probably put
I
on my
want
savings account.
anybody who has been the victim of any real
your card
crime
stage two.
to be able to do that and not be afraid that if they do that, they will be deported because the abuser
Stage
was
two.
wrong. It is they who is the criminal. It is wrong. It is wrong.
Or you could turn that
We're
in.
going to turn to the issue of trade now, if we can.
For
Last
Nate
night,
three?
we asked the candidates on this stage
Yeah.
to name the
For Nate
greatest
Or
geopolitical
Tesla.
threat facing the U.S.
Tesla's
Four of them
better.
mentioned China. U.S. businesses say China steals our intellectual property, and party leaders on both sides accuse China of manipulating their currency to keep the cost of goods artificially low. I'll ask this to Senator Bennett to start off with. How
better
would
than
you
these
stand
clowns?
up to China?
George W.
I think
Bush.
that, first of all, the biggest threat to our national security right now is Russia.
Come
not
back,
China.
George.
And second, on China, we've got competition because of what they've done with our election. In China, I think the president's been right to push back on China, but has done it in completely
Dude named
the
George
wrong
W.
way.
Bush 43
We
says
should
I'm better than
mobilize
these
the
clowns,
entire rest
and
of
he
the world,
left.
who all have a shared interest in pushing back on China's mercantilist trade policies, and I think we can do that. I'd like to answer the other question before this as well.
You have the time?
When I see these kids at the border, I see my mom because I know she sees herself, because she was separated from her parents for years during the Holocaust in Poland.
Oh, shit.
And for Donald Trump to be doing what he's doing to children and their families at the borders, I say this as somebody who wrote the immigration bill in 2013 that created a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people in this country.
You didn't see the EG versus OG game, did you?
That's ever been conceived, much less passed. It got 68 votes.
It got the Fusil and drums.
It had $46 billion
Yeah, didn't he go to Fusil and drums?
border security in it. There was sophisticated 21st century border security, not a medieval wall.
Yes,
and the president has turned the border of the United States into a symbol of nativist hostility that the whole world is looking at, when what we should be represented by is the Statue of Liberty, which has brought my parents to this country to begin with. We need to make a change.
Mr. Yang, let me bring you in on this, on the issue of China. You've expressed a lot of concerns
they're
about
gonna bring
technology
Yang in.
and taking jobs. Are you worried about China?
Yang's like,
So
really, bro?
how would you
I
stand
don't
up
want to talk
against
about this right now.
Well, I just want to agree that I think Russia is our greatest geopolitical threat, because they've been hacking our democracy successfully, and they've been laughing their asses off about it for the last couple of years. So we should focus on that before we start worrying about other threats. Now, China, they do pirate our intellectual property. It's a massive problem. But the tariffs and the trade war are just punishing businesses and producers and workers on both sides. I met with a farmer in Iowa who said he spent 6 years building up a buying relationship in China that's now disappeared and gone forever. And the beneficiaries have not been American workers or people in China. It's been Southeast Asia and other producers that have then stepped into the void. So we need to crack down on Chinese malfeasance in the trade relationship, but the tariffs and the trade war are the wrong way to go.
All right, Mayor Buttigieg, how would you stand up against China?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we've got to recognize that the China challenge really is a serious one. This is not something to dismiss or wave away. And if you look at what China is doing, they're using technology for the perfection of dictatorship. But their fundamental economic model isn't going to change because of some tariffs. I live in the industrial Midwest. Folks who aren't in the shadow of a factory are somewhere near a soy field where I live. And manufacturers, and especially soy
they're getting shot by cops.
Tariffs are taxes.
Come on,
and
Trump would
Americans
do
are going
that.
to pay on average $800 more a year because of these tariffs. Meanwhile, China is investing so that they could soon be able to run circles around us in artificial intelligence. And this president is fixated on the China relationship as
if you're
if
not
all that mattered
by
was the
factory,
export
you're by
balance
soy
on
farm.
dishwashers.
Trump
We
would be
got
like,
a much bigger
or they're getting shot.
issue on our hands. But at a moment when their authoritarian model is being held up as an alternative, because ours looks so chaotic compared to theirs right now because of our internal divisions. The biggest thing we've got to do is invest in our own domestic competitiveness. If we disinvest in our own infrastructure, education,
Pete
we're never
Buttigieg
gonna
as
be
a
able
like
to
a
compete. And if we
presidential
really wanna
candidate,
be an
no,
alternative, a
but
democratic
as like
alternative,
a
we actually
press
have to
secretary,
demonstrate that
hell
we care
yes,
about
hell
democratic
yes,
values at
he'd be
home.
my perfect press secretary. You know what I'm saying?
Take a quick break here, candidates. When we come back, the
What do you think about that?
continues with our colleagues, Chuck Todd, Rachel Maddow will
yeah.
be here. Much
I
more
wish
with our
Chef was on.
candidates straight ahead.
Damn, fuck you, dude.
I didn't say it didn't. That doesn't mean replace you. Man, dude, yeah. Pete Buttigieg would be the perfect press secretary. Oh, man. The dude can spin and spin and talk and talk and talk and not say a goddamn word. Anything of meaning or substance. I love it. So you playing Dota, you playing Slark.
All right, let's take a look at the Electoral College in 2020. The place to start, obviously, is where the last election ended, 2016. And remember, of course, by the popular vote, Hillary Clinton had almost 3 million more of those than Donald Trump. But we don't elect the president by national popular vote. We do it by the Electoral College. And there, Donald Trump had the right combination of votes in the right states, enough to win 306 electoral votes for him. So how is that map looking for 2020? Well, first of all, I think one thing you need to do, just understand how narrow that Trump path was in the Electoral College in 2016. You can start by looking at Wisconsin. Look at that margin there. Fewer than 25,000 votes separated Clinton from Trump in Wisconsin. This was a state that had not gone for a Republican in a presidential election since 1984 by a margin of fewer than 25,000 votes. Trump becomes the first in over 3 decades. He gets Wisconsin, the margin in Michigan even closer, barely 10,000 votes. Trump over Clinton, and again, that's the first time since '88 that a Republican carried Michigan. And then there was Pennsylvania here, about 44,000 votes. That's the margin for Trump over Clinton in Pennsylvania. Trump wins all 3 of those states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, by a combined total of about 75,000 votes. That's it. But that's enough to win the Electoral College. So for Democrats, if they want to reverse the result of 2016, that is the easiest and most direct path, at least on paper. You flip those states where Trump's margin was the narrowest, those states that had been voting Democratic before 2016.
You know, the real move here, right, is to completely and utterly annihilate Trump in all sense of the matter. Through the popular vote, through the Electoral College, and through almost every precinct that you can just fathom. Turn it all blue. Or Trump might win the same way he won against Hillary, by narrow margins that everyone keeps talking about, because he has that base, and that base is spread out through the fucking country. And they will vote for him. They don't care. Now, just Democrats get off their ass and actually fucking vote. We'll have some sort of election here, right? Well, if you look at these numbers here, this shit is crazy. Like, maybe if Gary Johnson wasn't on the ballot, maybe Hillary actually would have kind of won. Because those 200,000 went for Hillary, should have won these states.
Yeah, people were just being petty because Bernie, didn't make it.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That was one of them. I chose to abstain from voting. But now that I notice, Gary did basically take some of the Democratic votes from, most of the independents that would have voted Democratic, which just went to Gary Johnson.
Yep.
Yeah, they're kind of like Rogan. He was talking about, I voted for Gary Johnson. But he did in California. Hillary won that by a landslide anyway. But still, like, you look at these numbers and like these states that Hillary just barely lost by, you add Johnson's to hers and she wins it. No problem. Shit, I just realized that. Holy fuck. Look at the numbers. Oh, all right, back to this fucking debacle. How's your game going?
I'm losing.
No, you're not. Just take a deep breath and farm.
Hello?
Jeff!
Yeah.
What's on, buddy?
Pretty good, yourself?
Good. Watching this debacle. Atrocity, we call it debate.
The debate debacle?
Team.
Does that sound weird?
Just,
Does my mic sound fucked up?
Huh?
My mic, does it sound fucked up?
Kind of like you're far away a bit.
Yeah, there's no furniture in my room.
No range?
There's no furniture in my room, so it's just like echo. It's awful.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Because I told you they're replacing the floors.
Oh, yeah. You got hardwood?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I don't really care. My parents.
That's good, man. Easy to clean. You don't have to worry about, like, fucking bugs and shit.
Yeah, it's true. The only downside is like when they go hardware crazy, like the dog's claws sound so bad. You know? Just click.
But we are going to begin this hour.
Fucking law.
Oh, I got the copyright strike removed.
Oh, nice. So do you know what it was from?
Yes. It wasn't the Netflix thing. For some reason, some people have been putting copyright strikes on like fucking channels for some reason. Because even the big channels that I follow politically.
Why has that
shit.
not improved over your 2 terms as mayor?
Because I couldn't get it done. My community is in anguish right now. because of an officer-involved shooting. A black man, Eric Logan, killed by a white officer. And I'm not allowed to take sides until the investigation comes back. The officer said he was attacked with a knife, but he didn't have his body camera on. It's a mess.
Oh, Lord.
And we're hurting. And I could walk you through all of the things that we have done as a community, all of the steps that we took from bias training to de-escalation, but it didn't save the life
actually
of Eric
admitted
Logan.
that he made a fucking mistake. Huge.
And when I look into his mother's eyes, I have to face the fact that nothing
reason
that I say
someone's been
will bring him back.
hitting copyright strikes.
This is an
for
issue
channels
that is facing our community
and
so many communities around.
pissed off.
And
Well, yeah,
until we move
specifically it's for no reason.
of systemic racism, whatever this
want to be on
particular
Twitch.
incident teaches us, we will
barely
be
any
left
viewers.
with the bigger problem
Right.
of the fact that there's a wall
YouTube,
of
I had, like,
mistrust put up
at
one
one point I had, like,
racist
15
act at a time, not
viewers.
just from what's
More than
happening
I
in the
had
past,
Twitch since I've
but
been
from what's
streaming on
happening around the
Twitch.
country in the present. It threatens the well-being of every
And I was having
community.
a whole
And
lot
I'm
of fun yesterday
determined
too. It
to
just
bring
it
about
broke
a
my
day
momentum.
when a white person driving
Yeah,
a vehicle
but-
and a black person driving a vehicle, when they see a police officer approaching, feels the exact same thing. A
Twitch is for,
feeling
like,
not
the
of
more
fear,
popular people who can
but of safety. I'm
just trickle
determined
down
to bring
people
that
from
day
their
about.
YouTube channel.
Thank you, Mr.
to
Mayor.
watch Twitch.
If I could
Do
ask
good on
one
YouTube,
question,
then
just
you do
because
good
I
on
think,
Twitch.
Governor, I'll give you
That's the
30
only way
seconds.
now.
I think that the question they're asking in South Bend, I think in cities across the country, is why has it taken so long? We got a shooting
Makes
on
sense,
Christmas
though,
Day
right?
10 years before Ferguson.
On YouTube, you can like find, your fed shit. The algorithm. Twitch, you're kind of going there, clicking on like the top 10.
Yeah, well, Twitch has the problem, like
I think the real question that America should be asking is why 5 years after Ferguson, every city doesn't have this level of...
There's like no discovery. Twitch, not really.
Yeah, exactly. There's no new. I mean, there's that one tab like smaller community channels, but it's not pronounced. And plus, when you look for a channel, it doesn't have the algorithm to show, hey, here's the other small channels you might like that show the same thing that this big channel do. Like support him, like if you like this person or her. You know?
Yeah.
Now unless you're a titty streamer, then
But you're the mayor, you should fire the chief.
Yeah, it's super easy.
All of these issues are extremely important, but there are specific
Titty streamer.
there are symptoms. And the underlying cause has to do with deep, deep, deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system.
Mary Ann
And the
is
Democratic
bringing it
Party
today.
should be on the side of reparations for
Wonder
slavery
you should
for
go
that
Midas.
very reason. I do not
Or you
believe,
pussy.
I do not believe that the average American is
You can like Midas the Enchantress Creek.
educated about the history of racism.
Ms. Williamson, thank you very much.
Vice President Biden,
Oh,
I'm going to get to you.
what's it, Matt?
So rather than getting Shadow Blade now, get it later.
I'm just looking at that team and looking at your team. I guess it's pretty easy to fight.
We will give you 30 seconds since we're going to come back.
How is Sark against Mars? You would think it'd be pretty easy.
Yeah, I think I might be dead here.
On the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly.
They were talking about race.
There's not a black man I know, be he a
Like,
relative,
no one's like
friend, or
reacting to when
coworker
like
who's
literally
not
3
been
are
the
diving
subject
me.
of some form of
And now fucking
profiling or
Leonard is done.
discrimination.
She's dead as fuck.
My sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't
Yeah,
play with
fuck it,
us
go on Midas.
because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And
I don't like talking in this room. It's really bugging me.
Your side to the importance
Biden
of
doesn't like
finding
this shit.
common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually very hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California
Biden try to
who was
work
part
out
of the
some
second
tears?
class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Sweet old man tears.
So I will tell you that on
Sweet
this
old white man
subject,
tears.
it can be intellectually
Even better.
Democrats wine. Expensive wine.
California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Oh, the funny thing is too. On my chat. Twitch chat. The dude name was George W. Bush 43. He commented, "I'm better than these clowns," and then he left the chat. Some people know how to troll, man.
Mischaracterization my position across the board. I do not praise racist. That is not true. One. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the
Biden just sitting here straight up lying.
Number one.
Bernie Sanders like, bitch, I walk without Martin Luther King.
Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we worked very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, the busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Bernie's probably awkward as fuck. He's sitting there like, what the
So that's where the federal government must step in.
These couples arguing in front of me.
That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where
Bernie feels awkward as fuck. He's like, oh shit,
they're going at it.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran for the
Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy years.
Hello?
We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States.
Why won't it work?
I've also
I don't know.
very strongly that we in fact deal with the notion of.
I don't think so. Should just connect.
I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
Ooh.
Senator Sanders, I want to go to you. You said on the day you launched your campaign that
Well, Destiny wrote, Harris is an assassin sent for Biden. This is it. White man versus black woman optics on this are absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
And the perspective that diversity brings to this
Biden,
contest,
he played it
to
well
this
because
issue.
like he was explaining it. He
Democratic
didn't know what to say, so he's like, you know what, my time is up. I just
matter
realized that.
when they make this
Smart.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Unlike the Republican Party, encourage diversity, we believe in diversity. That's what America is about. But in addition to diversity, in terms of having more women, more people from the LGBT community, we also have to do something else. And that is, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. And that, how come today the worker in the middle of our economy is making no more money than he or she made 45 years ago, and that in the last 30 years, the top 1% has seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth? We need a party that is diverse, but we need a party that has the guts to stand up to the powerful special interests who have so much power over the economic and political life of this country.
Senator Gillibrand, I want to give you 30 seconds on this.
Well, first of all, where Bernie left off, we've heard a lot of good ideas on this stage tonight and a lot of plans, but the truth is, until you go to the root of the corruption, the money in politics, the fact that Washington is run by the special interests, you are never going to solve any of these problems. I have the most comprehensive approach that experts agree is the most transformative plan to actually take on political corruption, to get money out of politics, through publicly funded elections, to have clean elections. If we do that and get money out of politics, we can guarantee health care as a right, not a privilege. We can deal with institutional racism. We can take on income inequality, and we can take on the corporate corruption that runs Washington.
The first constitutional amendment to do that was introduced by me when I was a young senator.
Thank you, Vice President. We want to shift topics here. Senator Bennett, the next question is for you. On the issue of partisan gridlock, President Obama promised in 2012 that after his reelection, Republicans would want to work with Democrats. Fever would break. That did not happen. Now, Vice President Biden is saying the same thing, that if he is elected in 2020, both parties will want to work together. Should voters believe that somehow if there's a Democratic president in 2021, that gridlock is going to magically disappear?
Gridlock will not magically disappear as long as Mitch McConnell is there, first. Second, that's why it is so important for us to win not just the presidency, to have somebody that can run in all 50 states, but to win the Senate as well. And that's why we have to propose policies that can be supported, like Medicare X, so that we can build a broad coalition of Americans to overcome broken Washington, D.C. I agree with what Senator Gillibrand was saying. I share a lot of her views.
I don't even know who my mid was.
Gerrymandering in Washington. We need to end political gerrymandering in Washington. The court today said they couldn't do anything about it. We need to overturn Citizens United. The court was the one that gave us Citizens United. And the attack
I don't even understand how they're dying right
Shelby
now.
versus Holder is something we need to deal with. All of those things has happened since
just the drought
Vice President Biden was in the Senate. And we face structural problems that we have to overcome with a broad coalition. It's the only way we can do it. We need to root out the corruption in Washington, expand people's right to get to the polls, and I think then we can succeed.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds. It does sound as if you haven't seen what's been happening in the United States Senate over the last 12 years. It didn't happen. Why?
I have seen what happened. Just since we were vice president, we needed 3 votes to pass an $800 billion recovery act that kept us from going into depression. I got 3 votes changed. We needed to be able to keep the government from shutting down and going bankrupt. I got Mitch McConnell to raise taxes $600 billion by raising the top rate. And as recently as after President got elected, I was able to put together a coalition of the Cures Act that billions of dollars go into cancer research, bipartisan. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you just have to go out and beat them. I went into 20 states, over 60 candidates, and guess what? We beat them. We won back the Senate.
Thank you.
Chuck,
thank you,
the problem with what the Vice President...
Yeah, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Sometimes you do have to beat him, but the deal that he talked about with Mitch McConnell was a complete victory for the Tea Party. It extended the Bush tax cuts permanently. The Democratic Party had been running against that for 10 years. We lost that economic argument because that deal extended almost all those Bush tax cuts permanently and put in place the mindless cuts that we still are dealing with today that are called the sequester. That was a great deal for Mitch McConnell. It was a terrible deal for America.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Bennett. Go ahead, 30 seconds.
The reason why the Trump tax cut had to be passed is because they had to pay back their donors. You heard it. They actually said those words. So the corruption in Washington is real, and it is something that makes everyone
what is this Wind Ranger
over the last several months impossible. And I have the most comprehensive approach to do it with clean elections, publicly funded elections. So we restore the power of our democracy into the hands of the voters, not into the Koch brothers. We were talking about issues. Imagine the Parkland kids having as much power in our democracy as the Koch brothers or the NRA. Imagine their voices carrying farther and wider than anyone else.
They have like 2 floor staffs. The game's over.
Nothing else is possible, whether it's education or healthcare or ending institutional racism.
Thank you very much.
Senator Sanders, I'd like to put a different question to you. Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land since 1973. Now that there is a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, several Republican-controlled states have passed laws to severely restrict or even ban abortion. One of those laws could very well make it to the Supreme Court during your presidency, if you're elected president. What is your plan if Roe is struck down in the court while you're president?
Well, my plan is somebody who believes, for a start, that a woman's right to control her own body is a constitutional right.
Oh, man.
The government and politicians should not infringe on that right. We will do everything we can to defend our Roe versus Wade. Second of all, let me make a promise here. You ask about litmus test. My litmus test is I will never nominate any justice to the Supreme Court unless that justice is 100% clear he or she will defend Roe v. Wade. Third of all, I do not believe in packing the court. We got a terrible 5-4 majority conservative court right now. But I do believe that constitutionally we have the power
Did you
to
buy
rotate judges to other
level pack,
courts.
Jeff?
And
No, not yet.
New blood into the Supreme Court, and a majority
Is he anything good?
that will understand that
a whole bunch of duplicates.
a
I got
woman
the
has
only
the
thing I
right
got
to
rare
control
was
her own body, and the corporations cannot run the United States.
You guys aren't playing, are you?
Yeah, I'm
Give you 10
playing.
additional seconds because the question is, what if the court has
Let me just get online.
overturned Roe, and Roe is gone? All of the things you just described would be to try to preserve Roe. If Roe is gone, what could you do as president to preserve abortion rights?
Well, first of all, let me tell you this. Didn't come up here, but let's face this. Medicare
Ranked, I'll pick, doesn't matter.
guarantees every woman in this country the right to have an abortion if she wants it.
Thank you, Senator.
And can I just address this for a second?
Not a,
And I want to talk
Hold on,
directly
this seems like, oh, you
to
Midas
America's
on
women
suck is trash.
and to the men who love them. Women's reproductive rights are under assault.
I don't think it would have, what different item would have changed that game.
30 states are trying to overturn Roe v. Wade right now.
Still can't fight them.
And it is mind-boggling to me that we are debating this on this stage in 2019 among Democrats, whether women should have access to reproductive rights. I think we have to stop playing defense and start playing offense. But let me tell you something about politics, because it's corruption in the deal-making. When the door is closed and the negotiations are made, there are conversations about
Lone Ranger 0 and 7,
have been made on our backs.
Upper 0 and 4.
That's how the Hyde Amendment was created, a compromise by leaders of both parties. Then
Legends.
we have the ACA. During the ACA negotiations, I had to fight like heck with other women to make sure that contraception wasn't sold down the river or abortion services.
Gillibrand
And
taking
so
the spotlight.
what we need to know is, imagine this one question. When we beat President Trump
Eric, you
and
playing?
Mitch McConnell walks into the Oval Office, God forbid, to do negotiations, who do you want when that door closes to be sitting behind that desk to fight for
Well, play
I have been the fiercest
Ranger.
advocate
Again,
for women's
nothing
reproductive
changes that
freedom.
game. It doesn't matter what item. You can go fucking Dagon, you're still losing it.
When that door closes, I will guarantee we'll reproductive freedom no matter what.
Midas didn't change. Midas didn't make mid fucking, go 0 and 7 or whatever.
Addressing you first on this. You live in a state that has been hit by wildfires,
Of
flooding,
course,
climate change.
Just look around for
major
their
concern for
see who
voters
they
in your
bring for their
state.
fall
It's pretty
cups.
obvious. Obviously, this state as well. Last
Wind
night,
Rangers offlane?
on their proposal.
Or mid?
I don't even know. Viper was mid.
Well, first of all, I don't even call it
So
climate
yeah, 0 and 7 Wind Ranger, 0 and 4
as a species.
Viper. You guys have
President of the United States who has embraced
5 kills
over science
total.
fact will be to our
Midas didn't fucking change that game. So stupid.
visited while the embers were smoldering the wildfires in California. I spoke with firefighters who were in the midst of fighting a fire while their own homes were burning. And on this issue, it is a critical issue that is about what we must do to confront what is immediate and before us right now. That is why I support a Green New Deal. It is why I believe on day one, and as president, will re-enter us in the Paris Agreement, because we have to take these issues seriously. And frankly, we have a president of the United States. We talked about, you asked before, what is the greatest national security threat to the United States? It's Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I agree, climate change represents an existential threat. He denies the science. You want to talk about North Korea, real threat in terms of nuclear arsenal, but what does he do? He embraces Kim Jong-un, a dictator for the sake of a photo op. Putin, you want to talk about
Senator
Russia?
Harris, we're going to
he takes the word of the Russian president over the word of the American intelligence community when it comes to a threat to our democracy and our elections.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
These are the issues that are before us, Chuck.
I hear you. Thank
Chuck
you, Senator Harris.
Todd.
Mayor Buttigieg.
That sounds like
You're elected president in your first term. How is this?
I keep picturing Dave Chappelle and he does that white reporter.
In the Midwest.
Well, the reality is we need to begin adapting.
That's not him, right?
We also can't skip a beat on preventing climate change.
NBC reporter.
It's why we need
MSNBC reporter.
It's why we need.
His name is Chuck, though, right? In the Chappelle show, isn't it?
Rebate it out to the American people in a progressive fashion so that most Americans are made more than whole. This isn't theoretical for us in South Bend either. Parts of California on fire, right here in Florida, they're talking about sea level rise. Well, in Indiana, I had to activate the Emergency Operations Center of our city twice in less than 2 years. First time was a 1,000-year flood.
Yeah,
and
Chuck Taylor.
100-year flood. This is not just happening on the Arctic ice caps. This is happening in the middle of the country. And we've got to be dramatic.
I don't even know who the CBC guy is or whatever. I just kept, for some reason, it's just like Chuck. Like, oh, I'm picturing Dave Chappelle.
With the right kind of soil management and other kind of investments, rural America could be a huge part of how we get this done. And second, we got to look to the leadership.
Chappelle show.
Those networks of mayors and cities from around the world who have come together, not even waiting for our national governments to catch up. We should have a Pittsburgh summit where we bring them together as well as rejoining the Paris.
Thank you, Mayor Buttigieg.
I want to bring Governor Hickenlooper into this for a moment. Governor, you have said that oil and gas companies should be a part of the solution on climate change. Lots of your colleagues on stage tonight have talked about moving away from fossil fuels entirely.
I want to see the world burn.
Partners in this fight.
Fuck you, Russian Maddow.
I'm a scientist, so I recognize that we're within 10 or 12 years of actually suffering irreversible damage.
Can I abandon right now, please?
Hey man, level 25. He fucking spams his shit.
It's just like, can I abandon right now?
We have to look at what really will make a difference.
He's level 25 techies.
Wind, solar, and batteries, and the monthly bills go down.
Where he plays nothing but.
A network for electric vehicles. We are
you know what happened as soon as you start playing with Jeff?
And we created the first method.
Yeah, but I got good news though. He's on our team. He's not against us.
I mean,
you join the party, Jeff, the techies pick rate goes up to 40%.
If you look at,
you don't even like the hero.
The real problem, CO2. The worst polluters in CO2
you to go carry?
is the United States, and then it's concrete and its exhalation.
Well, you know what to do. Make it
we gotta recognize that only by bringing people together, businesses, nonprofits, and we can't demonize every business.
There's no way in hell I'm
fucking playing because ultimately, if we're not able to do that,
there's no fucking way I'm paying support. Fucking techies. No fucking way.
That's probably why he doesn't want to do it either.
Yeah, no, fuck that shit.
Democrats are arguing robustly among themselves about what's the best way to tackle.
I don't blame him, to be honest, but I ain't fucking doing it.
Including the president, are still not sure if they believe it is even a serious problem. So
why should I fucking switch? Because he fucking what? He thinks he's fucking more important.
Do it with no support.
I got it first. He fucking just there you go, bitch.
In our administration, we built the largest wind farm in the world, the largest solar energy facility in the world. We drove down the price, competitive price of both of those renewable sources. I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations throughout the United States of America, working with governors, mayors, and others, so that we can go to a full electric vehicle future by the year.
The fucked up thing is, I didn't even select the lane right. I just like waited. And I was like, oh, no one wants to play it, I'll play it. And he's gonna try to fucking jack it? Fuck off.
To be the
what was I doing?
Not only of the green economy, but economy that can create millions of jobs. But I would immediately join the Paris Climate Accord. I would up the ante in that accord, which it calls for, because we make up 15% of the problem. 85% of the world makes up the rest. And so we have to have someone who knows how to corral the rest of the world, bring them together, and get something done like we did in our administration.
Senator Sanders, I want to give you 30 seconds to follow up, and I'm going to hold you to 30.
Look, the old ways are no longer relevant. The scientists tell us we have 12 years before there is irreparable damage to this planet. This is a global issue. What the President of the United States should do is not deny the reality of climate change, but tell the rest of the world that instead of spending $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction, let us get together for the common enemy. And that is to transform the world's energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. The future of the planet rests on us doing that.
Before we go, hang on.
Go Bernie Sanders, bruh.
Hard. Pass the torch. Pass the torch to the generation that's going to feel the effects of climate change.
I've seen it been done, but you know, it all depends on how well he plays. Probably not against the what's his face though.
Doesn't mean you don't have old ideas.
No, we can do it.
John Kennedy.
I'm missing the goal.
John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together and maybe we can get a man on the moon. And John Kennedy said, by the end of this
Did you switch it to
we're
rank?
going to put a man on the moon.
You sneaky little fucker.
Kennedy was back in the day.
I didn't select rank. You must have switched it.
People, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I have had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people, masses of people. When we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy, we're going to have a Green New Deal, we're going to create millions of jobs, we're going to do this within the next 12 years because I'm not interested in just winning the next election. We are interested in our grandchildren.
He'd be like, oh shit.
We're going to sneak in a break in a minute, but before we go, I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only. All right, please.
Really?
President Obama in his first year wanted to address both healthcare and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was, obviously, healthcare. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one shot.
They are together, by the way.
It may be the only thing you get past. What is that first issue for your presidency? Eric Swalwell, you're first.
For Parkland, for Orlando, for every community affected by gun violence, ending gun violence.
Senator Bennett.
Get me out.
Climate change and the lack of economic mobility Bernie talks about.
Senator Gilbert.
Passing a family bill of rights that includes a national paid leave plan, universal pre-K, affordable daycare, and making sure that women and families can thrive in the workplace no matter who they are.
Oh, I like that. Okay,
Senator
Harris. Then, so passing a middle class and working families tax cut.
So what happens, W? You can never use your W.
I'm giving you credit for the first thing you said, the tax cut. I got you. Senator Sanders, first thing.
The premise that there's only 1 or 2 issues out there. This
I'm not saying there's 1 or 2.
Enormous crises.
Senator Sanders.
A political revolution. People have got to stand up and take on the special interest. We can transform this country.
Fine. Vice President Biden, your first issue, Mr. Vice President.
I think you're so underestimating what Barack Obama did. He's the first man to bring together the entire world, 196 nations, to commit to deal with climate change immediately. So I don't buy that. But the first thing I would do is make sure that we defeat Donald Trump.
Okay.
Period.
Mayor Buttigieg, your first priority, your first issue as president that you were going to block and tackle.
We've got to fix our democracy before it's too late. Get that right. Climate, immigration, taxes, and every other issue gets better.
Mr. Yang.
I would pass a $1,000 freedom dividend for every American adult starting at age 18, which would speed us up on climate change because if you get the boot off of people's throats, they'll focus on climate change much more clearly.
Governor Hickenlooper?
I would do a collaborative approach to climate change, and I would pronounce it well before the election to make sure we don't re-elect the worst president in American history.
And Ms. Williamson with the last word.
My first call is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you were so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
Thank you. You guys were close with the short, at least it was shorter responses.
Not at all.
All right. C minus.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with these candidates right after this.
Todd, shut the fuck up, Todd. Holy shit. Shut Todd, dude. Dang, he's like that dumb. He's like that dumb kid who thinks he's smart in class, but the teacher keeps giving him like privileges and shit. This motherfucker, for real? For reals? Forever? Verified. My channel verified, guys. Oh, shit. Oh, what this guy talking about?
On Election Day 2016, that is President Donald Trump, an incumbent running for re-election. In some ways, a re-election campaign for a president, of course, becomes a referendum on how folks feel the president did during his 4 years in office. So what can we say about how voters have been reacting so far to the Trump presidency? Well, what you see here, this is his average approval rating, meaning he's always got these different polls out there. One day NBC will have one, the next day CNN will have one. They're always coming in from all over the place. This trend line is an average, a day-to-day average of all of those polls put together. And what you see here in this trend line, it's a very narrow range that Trump is operating in. What I mean by that is, look at this is high watermark, his peak.
Yang? That's what Canada's rooting for? He was just laughing at this debate stage. They were laughing at him because like they asked him, what would you do? Yang in Yang fashion, $1,000 for everybody. But I'm taking away all your social safety nets. Not the libertarian Trojan horse, you know. I love it.
Crack 50%. So already we see a lower ceiling for Trump than we've seen in past presidents. But that comes with a flip side, and that is the basement for Trump.
Freedom dividend, guys. Freedom dividend
is the low point he's hit.
I need more battle pass points. Vote for Yang.
That is actually not as low as some of his predecessors have gone. We've seen Nixon, Bush Sr., Carter. We saw them fall into the 20s. At some point during their term. That has not happened to Trump either. 37 on the low end, 46 on the high end. Right now, somewhere in between. It's a very narrow range. It speaks to polarization. I'll tell you, it speaks to something else. Is this presidency really any different politically in terms of how it's
$1,000 a month
than the campaign
for the next follower?
2016, because compare this trend line.
On Twitch, $1,000 a month for the next follower. I'll make sure I vote for Yang. That way you can get it.
In the fall of 2016, Trump's average support at a low point, 36%. At a high point, about 43.5%. Of course, on election day, what was the number he hit? 46%. The same high watermark he's had in his approval rating. So
how am I going to do it?
Been operating
I'll vote for Yang. That way you get $1,000.
As president, we say it's
buy all the video games you want.
It also speaks to, look, this is somebody who succeeded as a candidate in 2016 despite some very, very high negative numbers. What I mean by that is, look at this, the exit poll on election day. Do you think Donald Trump's qualified to be president? Only 38% said they thought he was qualified for the job. The clear majority said Trump wasn't qualified. Does he have the temperament? 35% said he had the temperament. Do you like him? Do you have a favorable view? Only 40% did. You're not supposed to be able to win with those numbers. Trump was one of the big reasons his opponent, Hillary Clinton, by election day 2016, almost as unpopular as he was, only 43% favorable. He created that narrow path for Trump, and that becomes the question. When you look at that approval rating now in 2020, can he make his opponent as unpopular on election day as Clinton was in 2016?
Shaky, shaky Hillary. I'm watching my stream and I look like a dumbass. Go ahead and say it, Armando. So, who's playing what hero? Huh?
I'm playing Windrain.
Armando?
I just sold them in hero.
Fuck him, Trump.
We are going to have a question from Lester in the audience.
It's bullshit that he can put that shit while we're doing
We're going to go to the issue of guns.
Congressman Swalwell.
They just changed that,
though. Field of candidates, you have a unique position on gun reform. You're proposing that the government should buy back every assault weapon in America, and it should be mandatory.
I agree.
How do you envision that working, especially in states where gun rights are a strong flashpoint?
He could put a sun now on magic immune enemies.
Shotguns, but we can take the most dangerous weapons.
Before he had to do it, before he spawned,
we
now
have
he
the
can do it
NRA on
during
the ropes because of the moms, because of the Brady Group, because of Giffords, because of March for Our Lives. But I'm the only candidate on this stage calling for a ban and buyback of every single assault weapon in America. I've seen the plans of the other candidates here. They would all leave 15 million assault weapons in our communities. They wouldn't do a single thing to save a single life in Parkland. I'll approach this issue as a prosecutor, I'll approach it as the only person on the stage who's voted and passed background checks, but also as a parent of a generation who sends our children to school where we look at what they're wearing so we can remember it in case we have to identify them later. A generation who has seen thousands of black children killed in our streets, and a generation who goes to the theater and we actually look where the fire exits are. We don't have to live this way. We must be a country who loves our children more than we love our guns.
Fires can't break out.
Senator Sanders.
I understand the horror shooting, but damn.
Senator Sanders, a Vermont newspaper recently released portions of an interview you gave in 2013 in which you said, quote, my own view on guns is everything being equal, states should make those decisions. Has your thinking changed since then? Do you now think there's a federal role to play?
That's a mischaracterization of my thinking. Look, we have a gun crisis right now. 40,000 people a year are getting killed. In 1988, Rachel, when it wasn't popular, I ran on a platform of banning assault weapons, and in fact lost that race for Congress. I have a D- voting record from the NRA. And I believe that what we need is comprehensive gun legislation that, among other things, provides universal background. We end the gun show loophole. We end the straw man provision. And I believed in 1988, and I believe today.
Why would you
that
leave
assault weapons are weapons from the military, and that they should not be on the streets of America.
You would leave, your plan leaves them on the streets. You leave 15 million on the streets.
We banned the sale and distribution, and that's what I believe for many years.
Will you buy them back?
If people want to buy, if the government wants to do that, if people want to
bring them back. If you're going to be the government, will you buy them back?
Yes.
Senator Harris, we're going to give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think your idea is a great one, Congressman Swalwell, and I will say that there are a lot of great ideas. The problem is Congress has not had the courage to act, which is why when elected President of the United States, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together, bring all these good ideas together, and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I will take executive action, and I will put in place the most comprehensive background check policy we've had. I will require the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law, and I will ban by executive order the importation of assault weapons. Because I'm going to tell you, as a prosecutor, I have seen more autopsy photographs.
Was there any women Republican?
I have hugged more mothers who are the mothers of homicide victims, and I have attended more police officer funerals.
Who was it? Do you remember?
It is enough. It is enough. There have been plenty of good ideas from members of the United States Congress. There's been no action. As president, I will take action.
Mayor Buttigieg, I want to bring you in on this, sir. Rifles that are often shorthanded as military-style weapons. You are the only person on this stage tonight with military experience as a veteran of the Afghanistan War. Will military families, does that inform your thinking on this view? Do you believe that military families or America's veterans
I feel like she was a billionaire
at large have a different take on this than the other Americans who we've been talking about, who Congressman Swalwell is appealing to with his buyback program?
Yeah, of course, because we trained on some of these kinds of weapons. Look, every part of my life experience informs this. Being the mayor of a city where the worst part of the job is dealing with violence, we lose as many as were lost at Parkland every 2 or 3 years in my city alone. And this is tearing communities apart. If more guns made us safer, we'd be the safest country on earth. It doesn't work that way. And common sense measures like universal background checks can't seem to get delivered by Washington, even when most Republicans, let alone most Americans, agree it's the right thing to do. And as somebody who trained on weapons of war, I can tell you that there are weapons that have absolutely no place in American cities or neighborhoods in peacetime, ever.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds.
A real 30 seconds?
A real 30 seconds.
Okay. I'm the only person that's beaten the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that got the Brady bill passed, the background checks, number one. Number two, we increased that background check during the Obama-Biden administration. I'm also the only guy that got assault weapons banned, and the number of clips in a gun banned. And so, folks, look, and I would buy back those weapons. We already started talking about that. We try to get it done.
They're trying to take our guns, America.
Done. And it should be demanded that we do it, and that's a good expenditure
over
money.
my
Lastly, we should have
dead
smart guns. No
body.
gun should be able to be sold
You
unless
hear
your
me, you
biometric
Democrats?
measure could
Over
pull
my
that trigger.
fucking
It's
dead
within our
body.
right to do that. We can do that. Our enemy is the gun manufacturers, not the NRA. The gun manufacturer.
Vice President,
but the NRA is taking orders from the gun manufacturer.
Lester Holt has our next question. Lester, take it away.
All right, Chuck, this is a question from our viewers. We put some suggestions that asked maybe they could share some. Here's one that came from Kathleen from Canby, Oregon.
Hey, Lester, do you have to use the bathroom?
The current administration has inflicted irrevocable harm on our governing institutions and norms, and in the process, on our reputation abroad. The question is, what do you see as important early steps in reversing the damage done? And we'll put this one to Senator Bennett.
Thank you very much. What an excellent question. First of all, we have to restore our democracy at home. The rest of the world is looking for us for leadership. We have a president who doesn't believe in the rule of law. He doesn't believe in freedom of the press. He doesn't believe in independent judiciary. He believes in the corruption that he's brought to Washington, D.C., and that is what we have to change, and that's why everybody is up here tonight, and I appreciate the fact that they're up here for that reason. Second, we've got to restore the relationships that he's destroyed with our allies. Not just in Europe. He flew to the G20 last night and attacked Japan, Germany, and a third ally of ours without saying anything about North Korea or Russia. And when you've got a situation where you have a president who says something happened in the Straits of Hormuz, and the whole world doesn't know whether to believe it or not, that is a huge problem when it comes to the national security of the United States of America.
This is a perfect time. Thank you, Senator. That's a perfect time for me to do another one. And this is what this question is, which is, you're going to have to you're likely going to have to reset a relationship between America and another country or entity if you become president perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? I'll go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williams.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back. Because I totally understand how important it is that the United States be part of the Western Alliance.
I'm trying to get one or two words here. I hear you. Governor Hickenlooper.
You know, I talk about constant engagement, and I think the first country I would go to, and I understand they've been cheating and stealing intellectual property, would be China, because if we're going to deal with public health pandemics, if we're going to deal with all the challenges of the globe, we've got to have relationships with everyone.
Mr. Yang, we're trying to squeeze in a couple more things before we go to another break. Mr. Yang.
China, we need to cooperate with them on climate change, AI, and other issues. North Korea.
Thanks for the quickness. Mayor Buttigieg.
We have no idea which of our most important allies he will have pissed off worse between now and then. What we know is that our relationship with the entire world needs to change.
Buttigieg can't say
and
one
it
word.
starts by modeling American values at home.
Okay, Mr. Vice President,
You
we're trying to be quick.
We know NATO will fall apart if he's elected 4 more years. It's the single most consequential alliance in the history of the United States.
Senator Sanders.
It's not one country. I think it is rebuilding trust in the United Nations and understand that we can solve conflicts without
You hear
war,
Maddow?
with diplomacy.
Did you hear Maddow? Did you hear Maddow, right? She doesn't
All
like
the members of the NATO
Fuck
alliance.
Maddow.
Senator Gillibrand.
President Trump is hell-bent on starting a war with Iran. My first act will be to engage Iran to stabilize the Middle East and make sure we do not start an unwanted, never-ending war.
Senator Bennett, quickly.
Our European allies and every Latin American country that's willing to have a conversation about how to deal with the refugee crisis.
And Congressman Swalwell.
My first act in foreign policy, we're breaking up with Russia and making up with NATO.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Corny.
One
Corny.
question for Vice President Biden tonight. You have made your decades of experience in foreign policy a pillar of your campaign. But when the time came to say yes or no on one of the most consequential foreign policy decisions of the last century, you voted for the Iraq War. You have since said you regret that vote.
Dude,
but why should voters
you
trust
tank it with
when it
me?
comes to making a decision
I thought you were
about
gonna
taking the country
live.
to
You
war
had
the
the
next time?
vision.
Because once
Yeah, I did have vision, but I can't fucking.
that power. What happened was we got elected after that.
Oh,
I made sure
God.
the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq, and my son was one of them. I also think we should not have combat troops in Afghanistan. It's long overdue. It should end. And thirdly, I believe that you're not going to find anybody who has pulled together more alliances to deal with what is the real stateless threat out there. We cannot go it alone in terms of dealing with terrorism. So I'd eliminate the act that allowed us to go into and not the AUMF, and make sure that it could only be used for what its intent was, and that is to go after terrorists, but never do it alone. That's why we have to repair our alliances. We put together 65 countries to make sure we dealt with ISIS in Iraq and other places. That's what I would do. That's what I have done, and I know how to do it.
Senator Sanders, 30 seconds.
One of the differences that Joe and I have in our record is Joe voted for that war. I helped lead the opposition to that war, which is a total disaster. Second of all, I helped lead the effort for the first time to utilize the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen, which is the most horrific humanitarian disaster on earth. And thirdly, let me be very clear. I will do everything I can to prevent a war with Iran, which would be far worse than disastrous war with Iran.
Senator Sanders, thank you.
All right, guys.
Informed consent of the American people.
Good news is you get more time to talk, but I have to sneak in one more break. We will be right back with more debate.
But they keep fucking up. I'm gonna stop from bottom, I think. Every time I come bottom, I die. Every time. It's not worth it.
Fucking Chuck Todd. Piece of shit.
So much shit.
Alright, let's see. I got a couple things I need to do.
Want to walk with me?
Y'all are hilarious. Channel memberships. What is this about? Oh, I want this. I'm back in a minute and 30 seconds. We'll watch like five more minutes of this, and then probably end the stream there. This shit gets hella boring.
Probably get it now.
30,000 subscribers. Yeah,
I'm going top to farm. I think that Sugar wanted me to die.
That's going to be February, but then flip the calendar. From the last day of February, look at this. Go into March, just a couple days later, Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday, let me give you a sense what that looks like. Massive. Enormous. You go from one contest at a time, all the same. You got California, you got Texas, you got a bunch in the South, you got Massachusetts, Minnesota, all of these states, all at once. So February is going to produce some clarity in terms of who's a contender. Super Tuesday, mega primary. I could give us some real answers potentially in early March.
Oh, you see the end though. So bad. Looking weird. Look at your neck about to turn all the way around the other side. Go to bed, boy. Don't you get up.
Thank you. If you got on this that shot first, I got lucky with the jump to you. You can kill them, I got them. Although, they're probably all behind them, actually. Because I've done that like 3 times.
We can't be a forward-looking party if we look to the past for our leadership. I'm a congressman, but also a father of a 2-year-old and an infant. When I'm not changing diapers, I'm changing Washington. Most of the time, diapers smell better. I went to Congress at 31. And I found a Washington that doesn't work for people like you and me. It's made of the rich and the disconnected. I was the first in my family to go to college and have student loan debt. And so I have led the effort to elect the next generation of members of Congress.
Like Congressman, if you're saying names, the corniest one there.
This is a can-do generation. This is the generation that will end chaos. This is the generation that will solve student loan debt. And this is the generation
like how it feels when my name's Jeff, but it's Jeffrey Dahmer's name.
This generation demands solutions. That's why I'm running for president.
Congressman, thank you.
Ms. Williamson, 45 seconds for your closing.
I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump.
I know your trick shaker.
I have an idea about Donald Trump.
Donald
Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk.
That's one of the things where Tucky hasn't shown himself.
He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done.
I have a feeling they were going to, because they kept positioning themselves.
And he's harnessed fear for political purposes.
Hopefully,
so, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please.
Sure enough.
You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field.
I don't feel as fast.
Senator Bennett. DMT Philippines.
Thank you. Thank you. My mom and her parents came to the United States to rebuild their shattered lives. In the only country that they could. 300 years before that, my parents
basically she doesn't need
searching religious freedom here. The ability for one generation to do better than the next is now severely at risk in the United States, especially among children living in poverty like the ones I used to work for in the Denver public schools. That's why I'm running for president. I've had 2 tough races in Colorado by bringing people together, not by making empty promises. And I believe we need to build a broad coalition of Americans to beat Donald Trump and the corruption in Washington and build a new era of American democracy and American opportunity. This is going to be hard to do, but it's what our parents would have expected. It's what our kids deserve. I hope you'll join me in this effort. Thank you.
I think right now, MKB bill.
Governor Hickenlooper.
I think it's better than
I'm a small business owner who brought that same scrappy spirit to make Colorado one of the most progressive states in America. We expanded reproductive health to reduce teenage abortion by 64%. We were the first state to legalize marijuana, and we transformed our justice system in the process. We passed universal background checks in a purple state. We got to near universal health care coverage. We attacked climate change with the toughest methane regulations in the country, and for the last 3 years, we've been the #1 economy in America. You don't need big government to do big things. I know that because I'm the one person up here who's actually done the big progressive things everyone else is talking about. If we turn towards socialism, we run the risk of helping to re-elect the worst president in American history.
Oh. Thank you, Governor.
Okay.
Senator Gillibrand, you have the floor for 45 seconds.
Women in America are on fire. We've marched, we've organized, we've run for office, and we've won. But our rights are under attack like never before by President Trump and the Republicans who want to repeal Roe v. Wade, which is why I went to the front lines in Georgia to fight for them. As president, I will take on the fights that no one else will. I stood up to the Pentagon and repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I've stood up to the banks and voted against the bailout twice. I've stood up to Trump more than any other senator in the U.S. Senate. And I have the most comprehensive approach for getting money out of politics with publicly funded elections to deal with political corruption. Now is not the time to play it safe. Now is not the time to be afraid of firsts. We need a president who will take on the big challenges, even if she stands alone. Join me in fighting for this.
Senator Gillibrand, thank you.
Mr. Yang, you have 45 seconds for your closing.
First, I want to thank everyone who put me on the stage tonight. I am proof that our democracy still works. Democrats and Americans around the country have one question for their nominee, and that is who can beat Donald Trump in 2020? That is the right question. And the right candidate to beat Donald Trump will be solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and will have a vision of a trickle-up economy that is already drawing thousands of disaffected Trump voters, conservatives, independents, and libertarians, as well as Democrats and progressives. I am that candidate. I can build a much broader coalition to beat Donald Trump. It is not left. It is not right. It is forward. And that is where I'll take the country in 2020.
She's not going to have it because the Senator died.
Senator Harris, the floor.
for that fight.
Thank you. Well, I just want to leave you with a couple of things.
I think the damage is better because
we need a nominee who has the ability to prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I will do that.
Does she have a cold sore she's covering up?
This election is about you.
Is it?
This is about your hopes and your dreams and your fears and what wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's why I have what I call a 3 a.m. agenda. That is about everything from what we need to do to deliver health care to how you will be able to pay the bills by the end of the month. And when I think about what our country needs, I promise you I will be a president who leads with a sense of dignity, with honesty, speaking the truth, and giving the American family all that they need to get through the end of the month in a way that allows them to prosper. So I hope to earn your support. Please join us at KamalaHarris.org.
Senator, thank you. Mayor Buttigieg, 45 seconds.
Nothing about politics is theoretical for me. I've had the experience of writing a letter to my family, putting it in an envelope marked just in case, and leaving it where they would know where to find it in case I didn't come back from Afghanistan. I have the experience of being in a marriage that exists by the grace of a single vote on the U.S. Supreme Court. I have the experience of guiding a community where the per capita income was below $20,000 when I took office into a brighter future. I'm running because the decisions we make in the next 3 or 4 years are going to decide how the next 30 or 40 go. And when I get to the current age of the current president in the year 2055, I want to be able to look back on these years and say my generation delivered climate solutions, racial equality, and an end to endless war. Help me deliver that new generation to Washington before it's too late.
Thank you.
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds to close.
Of course they get Biden the last.
I suspect people all over the country who are watching this debate are saying these are good people, they have great ideas. But how come nothing really changes? How come for the last 45 years wages have been stagnant for the middle class? How come we have the highest rate of childhood poverty? How come 45 million people still have student debt? How come 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America? And here is the answer. Nothing will change unless we have the guts to take on Wall Street, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex, and the fossil fuel industry. If we don't have the guts to take them on, we'll continue to have plans, we'll continue to have talk, and the rich will get richer, and everybody else will be struggling.
Thank you, Senator.
And lastly, we'll hear from Vice President Biden. Sir, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you very much.
I'm fucking 80s. What are they doing?
It's important to restore the soul of this nation. This president has ripped it out. It's the only president in our history who has equated racist and white supremacist with ordinary and decent people. He's the only president who has engaged and embraced dictators and thumbed their nose at our allies. I'm secondly running for president because I think we have to restore the backbone of America, the poor and hardworking middle-class people. You can't do that without replacing them with the dignity they once had. Lastly, we got to unite the United States of America as much as anybody says we can. If we do, there's not a single thing the American people can't do. This is the United States of America. We can do anything if we're together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Vice President Biden, thank you. We want to thank our candidates. We've had 2 nights of spirited debate on a range of issues, 20 candidates in all. We want to thank all of the candidates last night.
Seriously, it takes guts to run and stick your neck out like this to you guys and to the 10 last night.
See, man, like, did this neck just cut me off?
I would also like to thank the audience for completely ignoring our suggestion not to react. We made it a lot more time.
National Committee and the Florida Democratic Party.
And of course, thank you to everyone at the Adrienne R. Center for hosting us here and our terrific audiences. Chuck mentioned.
Over terrific.
For Savannah, Jose, Chuck, and Rachel, I'm Lester Holt. Good night, everyone, from Miami.
I'd like to thank the 2 people that tuned into my live stream. Please subscribe to my channel. My dog is hungry. My girlfriend is bored of me before she leaves me. Feel free to hit that follow and subscribe button. It's the only way you can change my life. Oh, this country is fucked if we don't vote for Bernie. Bye.